Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to War Rapport Wednesdays. I know we've had a little bit of a break. It's been crazy, and your boy had some life stuff going on, but I'm here with Mike G. I appreciate you stopping by, my friend. A lot has happened since the last time we talked,
including you getting married.
Look at that. Very happily married. Now I'm required to say that. No, I'm just kidding. Very happily married. But let's get back to War Rapport Wednesday and all that. A lot has changed. The landscape on multiple sports has changed. One of the headlines from the Plains, Chad Baker-Mazara finding a new SEC home. Let's start there. What was the decision from what you've heard about Chad finding a new home in the SEC?
Look, he is being advised, as so many of these players are, that their value on the open market could be more than what it is. So, you know, we had a source reach out to us about Chad Baker. Ultimately, it came down to money. He had signed a deal, and his camp felt like that deal was not equivalent to his current market value. So they went out, they got back out on the market, and you know, hopefully this situation works out for him, from not just from a money standpoint, from a basketball standpoint as well too, because I'm sure he has aspirations to play basketball beyond college. And so you're leaving a team, quite honestly, that has supported you, right? And I feel comfortable saying through some of your antics. Fair. Which is fair. And they did their best to make it as financially viable for you to stay at Auburn as possible. But ultimately, if you're going to chase that extra dollar is always going to be out there. So you just hope that those are the right decisions, not only financially, but from a life standpoint for a lot of these guys, and that's what happened here. So good luck to him. I know Bruce Pearl is going to relock and reload a lot of big additions for Auburn basketball here with Keshan Hall coming in, the Big 12's leading scorer, 18-8 he brings into Auburn. Look, they're going to reload. They're going to reload, and Chad Baker's got to do what's best for him.
And look, one thing we know about Bruce is that he can recruit, and you had just mentioned it. A massive weapon from the Big 12 makes its way over to the Plains. Talk a little bit more about Hall, what he brings to the Tigers.
Just a talented scorer, right? But again, he can rebound as well too. He's lengthy. He's going to be a really dynamic three guard in this league. I can't wait to watch him play in Bruce Pearl's system. Look, Bruce plays a ton of guys like a lot of minutes, right? So you've got to get used to, I think, that balance of minutes that he's going to have there. But Keshan Hall said, I want to be coached by the best in the business when he decided to hit the transfer portal, and then he chose Auburn. So obviously he thinks that Bruce Pearl is the best in the business, and the results might suggest that he is definitely one of the best of the business. Obviously, Todd Golden just won a national championship in Florida and beat Bruce twice this year.
Yeah, he did.
But you know, like, the best basketball right now is in the SEC, and if you're Keshan Hall, that's where you want to come play ball right now. So with what Auburn had outgoing and what he brings to the table, Auburn was the right fit at the right time.
But I wanted to talk kind of a big picture of college sports. It really became a big talking point with Nico Amaliava holding out from Tennessee, going to UCLA eventually, and the whole discussion of money. I wanted to go, there are multiple ways we can attack this. Well, one question is this just something we as college sports fans kind of have to deal with?
Yes, these are pro problems come to college sports, right? Again, I mentioned earlier in the segment, there are advisors involved, there are parents involved, there are agents involved now. There's somebody in the athlete's ear saying, hey, you can get more than what you're getting. And most of the time, those people have a vested financial interest in telling them that, though, because they want a cut of whatever extra they're going to get.
Sure.
So if you're a student athlete, you have to pick your advisors wisely. And I think that a lot of student athletes are going to learn this. What we see at the NFL level is we see a lot of guys are not financially literate, but they come into millions of dollars suddenly. So they trust financial advisors who, quite frankly, wrecks are crooks. And they rip them off, and you don't have the financial literacy to know you're being ripped off until it's too late. Yeah. Well, this is a different kind of ripping off that happens where a guy talks you into, yeah, you know what, you should go pro right now. This is your best option right now. Get the money while you can. And it's the wrong decision for their career. And, you know, it doesn't work out, or they don't get drafted where they think because somebody grossly estimated their value on the draft market.
Seen it multiple times.
Yeah, so we see this all the time. In Nico's case, you were getting, reportedly just over $2.5 million from Tennessee. You thought you were worth $4 million. You ended up with 1.5 at UCLA, so you got less money at a worse program. You left a playoff contender to make $1 million less a year, and I don't know how he's got his finances set up, but I'll tell you, those California taxes hit a little different. So the net to that paycheck is going to be substantially less if he is, I don't know if he's running through an LLC or what, but if he's based in California, he's going to be paying a lot more. So, was this a good decision? I don't think that most people would look at where he landed up and say, you got good advice.
To be fair, again, UCLA is not the top of the Big Ten. You know what I mean? Like, you go to Tennessee, Rocky Top is practically packed out. And the way they were playing, it looked like it was heading towards that point. I hate to say that he's a cautionary tale. I hope he does well, but I think you're right, is that you look at the Coliseum for UCLA, and it's half empty. So we'll see what happens with Nico. And
a West Coast team that joined the Big Ten, right? Yes. So, with USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten, now you've got these West Coast teams that have to travel to the East Coast. So, geographically,
it's the most insane conference.
Yeah, I just don't know that move made a ton of sense. But it's what he had in front of him with the decisions that were made. That is life. That life is a series of decisions, actions, and consequences. And this is what his actions and consequences are. So I'll be interested to see if what kind of season he has.
Yes.
Because if Tennessee goes on to make the college football playoff and UCLA bombs it out and he has a mediocre season, you hurt yourself in every single way. I hope that he does right with whatever money he makes at UCLA, because certainly the big money is at the NFL level still.
Yes, absolutely. Right? But I also have to agree with you that you have to choose your advisors carefully, because it could be, at least at the pro level, they're licensed, they have opportunities, they know how to negotiate. You got to be careful who you pick up there. But if you have Uncle John Doe saying, hey, look, you're worth $4 million because I know so, please be careful out there. We're going to talk about Auburn football now. Look, A-Day, let's just say, was a little different.
It was.
Overall reaction for how A-Day was set up this year.
Look, I'm not a big fan of taking things away from fans, but it was a practice. But we did get some information, man. We got to see Perry Thompson absolutely ball out. We saw a lot of Deuce Knight. Jackson Arnold did not play due to a hamstring thing. It was cautionary, so he's not severely injured or anything from what we understand. But it was fun. It was a little fun to see those guys out there in skeleton drill and team drill a little bit. But they did give back to the fans. Extended period for signing. Coach Hugh Fes was out there meeting, glad-handing with fans. I like to see that. Felt like it was a little extra this year in light of some of the things that they cut out of A-Day. But ultimately, this is the direction that spring is going. Yeah. Coaches are de-emphasizing these super physical springs because they want to keep their teams healthy, and they want to make it to fall camp as healthy as possible. They want to focus on strength and conditioning, and they want to get their team strong and physically ready for the grind of an SEC schedule. If you're Auburn, you kick your season off, I think, August 29th with Baylor. You got a couple cupcakes, and then you've got 3 straight SEC games culminating in Georgia to finish out that first half of the season. And once you hit SEC play, you want to make sure you're in tip-top shape. So that's what this spring for Hugh Fes was about. It was about getting his team ready for what really is a critical year 3 for him. The way the first 2 years went, they cannot afford a flop in year 3. And now, what is a flop in year 3? A lot of people have asked me, Mike, do you think Auburn fans would be happy with a 7-win season? I said, looking at that schedule, 7 wins would be tough. 7 wins would be a really, really difficult season to stomach, because you got Baylor. Again, you should be able to get out of those first games 3-0. If you win 1 of the next 3 SEC games, Georgia is the last one, so let's just call that an L. Yeah. So you beat Texas A&M or Arkansas, and suddenly you're 4-2 headed into your last 6-game stretch. The next 5 games are all winnable.
Oh,
so
there you go.
Auburn could go on an epic run after Georgia, that sees you 9-2 headed into the Iron Bowl. I think that this schedule sets up better than any we've seen for Auburn football in the last 15 years. And if you're Hugh Fes, you have to take advantage of it. That means keeping your team healthy through the spring, getting to the fall, making sure that your receiver room is as healthy as possible.
Please.
Yeah, Rex, they've stacked the deck around Jackson Arnold.
Okay.
They've said, you know what? We may not be able to go out and find Superman at quarterback, but what we can do is we can prepare our potential Superman in Deuce Knight to take over next year or year after or whenever he's ready.
Be the project.
And we can give Jackson Arnold as many weapons as possible to make sure that his floor is super high for next season. If he passes for anywhere near 3,000 yards and he has a better than 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, Auburn's going to win 9 games easily.
9-game win is the ceiling at this point. Wanted to ask you, though, quickly, starting quarterback, does it look like Jackson Arnold?
It is Jackson Arnold.
Okay.
I don't think it's a question. Auburn does not have a quarterback controversy this year. It's Jackson Arnold. And look, Deuce Knight is picking things up quickly.
Oh, okay.
I think that he made the offseason jump that a lot of fans thought Walker White might actually make.
Interesting.
It didn't click for Walker White, and so Walker's out of here. But now you've got Deuce Knight in here, and he is not the project I think that a lot of people thought he was going to be. And it's fun to see that young man not take that approach to his development and say, I'm not a project. I'm here to compete now. Now, is his reality this year? I don't think it's this year. But you need a clear succession at quarterback if you're Auburn. And it's got to start with not always going to the portal looking for a savior at QB.
Fair.
So Hugh Fes has said the way to build this thing is from high school. I think this could be the start of that true high school pipeline of dynamic QBs to Auburn in the SEC.
Now, last question here to wrap things up. It is good to catch up with you as always. If this does go south for Auburn and for Hugh Fes, do we see a change at head coach?
I think it's possible, and I don't think you could take anything off the table if you're John Cohen, right? The primary function of the athletic director at Auburn University is to hire and fire football coaches.
That's fair.
Period. You are judged by how your football coaches go. Hugh Fes himself has pointed to this year 3 as critical in a few facets. Number one, recruiting. He said, if we're not in the top 6 or 7 in recruiting by year 3, everybody here is going to be looking for a job. They did it by year 2. But 2 losing seasons straight puts a lot of pressure on year 3 to produce those results from a schedule standpoint. And he understands that. He knows this is a results-based business. And I think that if you're talking to Hugh Fes, he would say that the pressure that he feels right now in year 3 is fair. This is a results-based business, and it's time for Auburn football to produce results.
It is time for Auburn. Hey, look, the third year is always somewhat of the magical year because now it is all Hugh's guys, his culture. We'll see how things turn out. Mike, before we wrap up, gotta remind everybody, it's been a minute. Where can they find you, my friend?
We are hot on social media right now. Follow me at Mike Gittens on Twitter. Also at Mike Gittens _ on Instagram. We're at the War Rapport on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. Also follow us on Locked On UCF.
There you go.
A lot of Auburn UCF crossover this offseason. Yeah, certainly. So we've got some news there.
All right, y'all. Well, that does it for this edition of War Report. Great to be back here with y'all. We're going to, of course, catch up with more stuff of Auburn, everything Auburn, of course, that baseball team. We'll talk about them coming up as well. Mike, I appreciate you, my friend. Guys, that'll do it for War Report Wednesday.